Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, good morning, Tom. How are you?
I am fine, thanks. How are you doing today?
I'm good. No complaints. A little brisk here out on the enclosed back porch, but we're making it work because we have no choice. Got the sun streaming in that I've got to get better curtain for, so I apologize for the sun coming in the side window of the office today. But what are you going to do?
You know, if you hadn't said any of that, no one probably would have noticed.
There you go. Self-sabotage at its best. Right? Right.
Maybe.
You know, expect it. Well, I think what it is would be that I want to be perfect at what I do. And so I feel imperfect because the lighting isn't working well today. I'm afraid you're going to see my breath because 10 minutes ago I could see my breath when I spoke. And so I'm self-conscious. And I think that's one of the really interesting things that I hadn't put together. And let me set the stage first. That's the great Tom Brush. I'm Bob Graham. And we do this program every morning, hoping to figure out that one thing, just one thing that can help us move forward, not $2 bajillion and, you know, the place in Florida and all that good stuff, but just one step forward to achieving what we're trying to achieve. It could be a simple goal, it could be a big goal, but it starts with the first step. And as you think through this, as we talk, if you have some insight, some perspective that you want to share, we'd love to see your comments. We love to read comments. We learn from them. You learn from them. We all learn from each other. And so we're just the facilitators, really, of this discussion. And today we're talking about coming to terms as you self-sabotage. Let me just give it straight. We all self-sabotage. We're all going to keep doing it. You're not going to overcome it. It will not go away. What I've discovered, and I think Tom will agree, and I'll ask for his point of view on this in a second, is we have to come to terms. And to me, coming to terms is to know that when I get overly worried about the sun shining in my window and my breath being shown on this camera, that this is me with the perfection complex. Me wanting it to be perfect, not wanting it to be just whatever it is. And as Tom said, no one's paying attention. And so I've got to know when I'm sabotaging myself, and I've got to be the one to pay attention to it and ideally stop it before it gets rolling. Because I think for me, it's one thing leads to another, leads to another. So if I can stop it at the start, that's the best thing. What are your thoughts, Tom?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things is that I think we just don't want to be judged, whether by ourselves or by someone else. And because we in some way value that judgment and believe that whatever that judgment is potentially right. And I think that's where we sort of get into trouble, you know, that we feel like we have to be right. It has to be perfect. You know, we should have done this, would have done this, could have done this, you know, all those words that are now joining my list of, you know, words that must not be said. I think is when we start having those thoughts, that's how we can start to realize that that rather than just doing, we are worried about what the results are going to be. And I think this is what I said shared yesterday, was that we never can tell the results. You know, the results, you can't say, well, what if I do this? And really be clear on what the actual results are going to be. Because there's so many variables that are a part of it that you'll never know until you take the step. So yes, you want to evaluate the step, but when you judge it to try to figure out, is it right or is it wrong? It's impossible to do, because until it has happened, we don't know what the results are going to be. And so I think that fear of being judged, if we can start to identify ways to avoid that, that may help us better come to terms with the fact that, yeah, we're going to still judge ourselves. We are going to still be worried. But if we can identify that and figure out, all right, when I see that, now I'm going to move forward, there's a better chance that we can start to figure out how we're going to come to terms with it.
I think for me, as you were talking about this and the idea of being judged, I judge myself when I'm self-sabotaging by the most critical terms possible. So if you took a pool of 100 people that wanted to tell you about me, you find the one who's the most negative. That's going to be the one that I use right before I self-sabotage. It's not an even scale for me. It's really geared towards, you're just lousy at this. And I think I've got someone asked me yesterday, how do I overcome that? I said, I try to surround myself with people who often remind me of my great value. It not just by, Bob, you're amazing, but by the fact that they care and the fact that they ask me for information, advice, and they are supportive, not like I need someone. It's not like every morning I go, Tom, give me the pep rally. Sometimes you do that, but just the fact that you know what I'm trying to do and you care about me and what I'm trying to do makes it matter.
Yes. Here's the other thing I'm going to throw out there.
Please.
That I think we often think of self-sabotage around the things that we're critical of ourselves or others are critical of ourselves. I think there is the opportunity to self-sabotage us on the other side.
Oh,
all we do is listen to the good, and like we think, oh, I got this covered. This is easy, blah, blah, blah. We're maybe not as prepared as we otherwise would be. You had a great presentation yesterday with new technology that you wanted to try, and you got great reviews and whatever. And if you just listen to all of that, you'd be like, I got this down. Next time, I don't need to worry about it. I'll just go, and you think about all the time that we spent just talking about how to, maybe look at it a little differently. If I had just gone like, oh, Bob, that's awesome. You've got this. You always do this. Why didn't you even talk through it?
Right.
You could self-sabotage yourself in a different way in not being prepared the way that you would, because you feel like everything is going to be exactly the same as it was the last time. When in reality, there's going to be different people in the room. It might be a different topic. The internet might act differently. And so I think that on both the negative remarks and criticism that we have from ourselves and from others, if we listen too much to the positive and the awesomeness that we are, we can also self-sabotage ourselves to think that, maybe I don't need to do any more. Maybe I have reached perfection and now I can just move forward.
Yeah, I wish that were my problem. It's usually the other. I just, and I don't think I'm alone. And I know what it is at the end of the day, what I'm really trying to do by listening to the harshest critic is prevent me from having to really move into a new phase. Because with this presentation, you mentioned it, using some new technology, it does move things forward for me, but it creates a whole another set of circumstances. Now I have to market myself a different way. Now I have to be able to deliver that on different platforms. Now I have to be able to finesse some things and talk some people into it. I had a pretty good picture of how my speaking business went 2 months ago, 2 years ago, a year ago. Now it's kind of thrown up in the air because of this new approach. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's bad. It's great from the big picture, grow my business perspective. But when I think about it in the moment, it's a new game. And when it's a new game, that scares me.
Sure. I think and I also think that, I think that the challenge we face is that in some ways, I think when we're dealing with the negative, the criticism, that's more recognizable. Not easy to recognize, not easy to deal with, but I think we see that as, oh, I'm listening to all this negative stuff, and I'm listening to the one person who didn't like it rather than the 99 who did. And I believe we need to do both, because if we spend too much time listening to the 99, we don't see that necessarily as self-sabotage. We don't see it as, and I can say myself, over the last couple of years, I've done this cohort on fundraising, creating a fundraising plan. And it's very similar, even though the two cohorts are in two different places. And so I think the second time I went to give it, I was like, I've got this content. I know what's going on. I know where I'm going to be. And not that it was, fortunately, it wasn't a complete disaster. And it didn't go exactly the way I thought. And as I look back on it, I sort of was doing that. I've got this, people told me how great it was and how awesome it was. And the reviews were great. And all right, great. I'm just going to go repeat it. And what happens is that is what happened then was no longer real. Things had changed. I understand differently about it's a different group. So they have a different knowledge, experience, perspective. They're going to ask different questions. They might be similar and they're going to be different. And so I think while we need to listen to every voice and every comment that's in our head and that is given to us, we also have to, I think, realize that that's not right. It's just real for them in the moment. And that's going to constantly change every time we talk to someone else. Now, that in itself could lead to more self-sabotage.
Well, the variable all through there is people, right?
Correct.
I've taught college courses, same content to 3 different groups over the course of a day or two. And every class I ever taught had a different personality. One class would be eager and they'd be excited and they'd be pushing me. Oh, well, I thought about this thing. And what about this and this? Another group would be like, I don't understand what you're talking about. The third group would be in the middle. Every single semester I taught, there was never okay. And these were all college students at the same college, same grades. There was nothing different about them except that they're people and people see things differently. And that's why, you could have watched my presentation yesterday if you were in that audience, and 2 people commented about my hands moving around too much. Someone else commented that I was the most passionate person they had ever seen. Those are fine things to say, and that's their opinion. That I've learned to try not to let that affect me. My hands are going to move. If I do this like this with my hands behind my back, it already feels restrictive. It doesn't feel like me. So at the end of the day, I've got to be me, right? So if this is me and I feel I see the world and this is how I go through the world, to say, Bob, hold your hands like this all day, or open your hands when you want Tom to talk and close them when you want you to talk, or whatever all that silly stuff is, that's not going to work for me. I don't think that way. And I think part of this is there's a line between what people criticize and what we know is just us.
Well, and I think we take those results, I'm going to call them results. Someone's feedback is a result based on an action. And we probably give them more credence than they deserve. So if you think about go back to my equation of knowledge plus experience plus perspective equals what's real, we're in our 50s. So the amount, sorry, I think people probably figure that out. Maybe not for you, you're a young looking guy. So
it's the short hair now.
Correct. I just have no hair. So that doesn't. When we take all of what
there's self-sabotage at our best, right? We're just making jokes about being old guys.
It's just what's real. It's not. This is what it is. It is what's real. So when we take all of that we have, the knowledge we have, the experience, and over 50 years, how much influence does one day in our life and one person in our lives influence that? Now, sometimes you get these aha moments where you're like, wow, I never heard it that way. That really impacted me. That's a whole new perspective I never thought of. And so maybe our P changes completely. And that's still balanced out by all of the knowledge and experience we have. And so I think if we just take it all in stride, is like, this is just one more piece of information. Sometimes it's a little more impactful than others. And other times it's just something else that we need to incorporate into that whole equation about what is real for us. So obviously you feel very comfortable moving your hands. So yeah, that person offered their perspective. And you know that that's just who you are. And so it's a tiny little bit that falls into the big pool of your perspective. Doesn't have that much impact on what is real, because you've probably heard it before and you've determined that that's not really you. And so that's okay. Now you move forward. And so when people say that to you, it has less impact, right? Because you know that's who you are. And so, I think that's, if we start to look at every little bit of data as just one tiny drop in where we're at. And yeah, some ripple more than others, but in the end, it's in a big pool. And so we take it as that, not as like this earth-shattering comment that is dramatically going to change who and what we are. Sometimes those happen. I think they are rare and far and few between.
What's funny to me is when I was doing speaking in rooms, at conferences and things, if there was someone who's critical afterwards, I'd ask them questions. They'd be like, I really don't like your hands waving around. It's like, oh, okay, that's great feedback. Do you like anything that I did? They'd be like, well, this. And then ask the big question. What brought you up here to talk to me? I'm just amazed that you can get up in front of people. I've always wanted to do that, and I've never been able to do it. So it's kind of like you're critiquing the person about a little thing, but really your frustration is this person can do this, and you've never been able to do it. And I've seen that happen so many times when I talk to people when you dissect it. It's not that they want to be critical, and they step back. It's like, I guess I should just be, you're really not that bad. It's just your hands are distracting. I'm like, okay, I've heard that a million times. That's great feedback. But they just can't even imagine being on a stage. And in their mind, if they were on the stage, their hands would work perfectly and everything would be, all figured out. And it's just that perspective, And I've also had people after I've spoken come up and be like, you're like a rock star. Can I get your autograph? It's like, really? I mean, come on. But that's what's real to them. It resonates in a way, thankfully. But there are all those reactions. And I think you and I have both chosen to put ourselves out a lot in front of people in a variety of platforms, doing this program and some of the stuff we're doing. When we both go out and speak, a lot of people don't have that kind of exposure. So they're not used to putting themselves out there. So they're not used to, once you put this program out there, it's a free-for-all. Thankfully, we don't get harsh criticism about it, but we could.
And what if we did? Would that change what you did?
Yes. In the short term, it would. Absolutely.
Why?
Because I am a people pleaser and I want approval, and I suffer the people who are critical more than anyone else. So how's that for a Friday insight?
Well, I guess so you're placing a lot of, if you go back to our math, how much is that adding to your perspective?
Very little.
Enough to dramatically change what's real for you.
No, because like you said, it's a drop in the big bucket, because of course we know from the great musical Rent that there are how many hours or minutes in a year, Tom? Do you know?
You better know it, because you can't bring it up if you don't know it. It's 300, I don't know.
525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? In daylights, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee? Yes, I did. I just pulled in some Rent musical.
So how are you going to react when somebody says...
By the way, Tom, did you just look up there and see that we had like 6, 12, 20 people watching, and I started to sing and it went to 1 like that?
No. And you know why?
I did.
That doesn't surprise me. And I'm back to the belief that we need to put our value out there. We need to share what's real for us. Because, maybe the 3 people or 12 people or 20 people or 1,000 people who were watching, it didn't hit home for them. Somebody else watching it later, maybe it does. And is that worth it? Is that one person's impacting that one person worth the fact that 1,000 people were just like, time to move on with my life? That's a question.
Well, I think that's a great topic for next week, is talking about results. and what the real results we're trying to achieve are. Because I think you and I have a perspective that's different than many.
Are those results in the moment? They result in the...
Don't ruin it. Dude, we got to fill 5 days next week. Don't ruin it now. Don't.
Results? I'm good on that one.
Okay. All right. Good. What's your cup say today? Your cup
Peanuts.
That's what I thought it said. Peanuts. Okay. Fair enough.
With a little Woodstock.
Okay. Nice. Very nice. Lovely.
We
So,
just got one more person back in. My friend Barb, who occasionally watches, is potentially the most fanatical Peanuts person I've ever met.
Wow.
Yeah. All you'd have to do is go to our Facebook page and you might be like, this person is obsessed. Oh, more than obsessed, which is all right. Good for her. It's cool.
Have you noticed that the sun is moved behind the building now?
I haven't, because I wasn't paying attention to that.
If we started this program at 8:21, I'd have perfect lighting, Tom. At least for 3 days.
For today.
For today.
And maybe not even tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true. So moving on, we've gotten loose today. I like loose Fridays. What is your one thing today, that thing that you want us to think about and see if we might apply to our situation? Not that it's a guarantee, but it's worth consideration.
Yeah. You put that comment up about we don't want to be judged that I said earlier. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking that there needs to be like the next part of that sentence. We don't want to be judged. And if we are not judged, how do we grow?
Whoa.
Right? I mean, it's just, what is the impact of being judged play in the grand scheme of what's real for us? Do we determine that this is a huge drop in the bucket and it's going to burst the whole bucket and what's real for us is just going to completely change? Or is it a small drop that creates a little bit of a ripple, that it's something we have that has some influence on what's real for us? And I think so often when we take in that information, we probably over exaggerate the influence that it has on us. And so we all are. I mean, I think we all there are certain things for each of us that press our button, that are like, that's a trigger point for whatever reason. And so we give it more credence than it probably deserves, which means that then has a greater, at least temporary, impact on what's real for us. And I think if the whole idea of coming to terms with it is maybe saying that, yeah, you know what, guess what? We're always going to be judged, and we're going to judge ourselves. Let's just maybe take a step back and think about, in the grand scheme of our knowledge, experience, and perspective, how much is it influencing it? Not just immediately, but long term. And I think if we can start to re-examine how we place emphasis on that judgment, we maybe will be better able to come to terms with self-sabotage.
I couldn't add a word to that. That was beautifully done, as always, Tom. You really nailed it, I think, perfectly. Do you want to do the lovely wrap-up? Because you are so good at that.
I'd be happy to do that. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, as all over the place as it was, you like hearing like songs from Rent, musical themes that might pop up, and you're not already a member of our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, you should join us. Because while we do have some fun and do things like Rent and some other crazy things in that group, we are also helping one another try to move forward.
There's a great discussion in there over the last 12 hours about some tax stuff.
There are helpful hints. And I think that's the piece. What I love about this community that we are growing, it's a group of organizational leaders, small business owners, entrepreneurs, people who are just trying to look at things a little differently, is that they are willing to add value. And it's not like, here, let me give you a tip, and it's $5 for every person who does it. They're willing to share a little bit of the value that they have to offer to help one another move forward. And yeah, maybe people look at that value and say, you know what? I could use more of that. What would that look like? And now there is an opportunity for all of us to grow. And so if you're not a member of that community and think that that would be a place for you to hang out, Just go to Facebook and search for Ring of Renegades. It is a private community because we are creating space for people to be able to be vulnerable, to share their successes and not feel like they're going to be judged about that, to share when they're struggling and know that they're going to find support there. So all you have to do is ask to join and then tell us why you're a renegade. And you can become a part of this ever-growing group that's helping people take the next step along their own unique pathway to success. So we hope that we will see you there. And if you are struggling with trying to figure out how to balance that judgment and how to really put it into perspective of how much does that self-sabotage me, or can I come to terms with it so that I can continue to move forward, our Renegade Success Network might be the place for you. And I'm going to share some information about that in just a minute. So I hope that you have had a great week. I think it's been, we'll wrap it all up tomorrow. So we will be back tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern time, for the next edition of today's Antidote. Have a great day, everyone. And we will either see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. or we'll see you inside the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. Have a great day, everyone.
Are you struggling to make your vision a reality? Are you stuck and don't know what to do next? Are fear and doubt holding you back? The Renegade Success Network will help you determine the next steps on your pathway. Here is some of what you will get. Create your pathway call to start you on a better path. Unlimited laser solution sessions to keep you from getting stuck. Nurture your network events to build your network with other successful leaders. Monthly Renegade challenges to prepare you for what lies ahead. The Renegade Success Vault, giving you access to videos, tools, and tips on specific topics anytime you need them. And the Renegade Success Network community, an exclusive Facebook group of like-minded renegades, all working towards achieving their goals. You have a choice. Do it yourself and fumble forward slowly and alone. Or join the Renegade Success Network and be part of a community built to help you find your own pathway. Join today at renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Act now and jumpstart your journey on your own pathway to success.